Eso está libre.
Hola, buenas.
Hi, good evening to everyone, and thank you very much for coming along to this event. I'm Pablo Gonzalez, and I work in the area of culture in the Telefónica Foundation, and I want to welcome you all here today to our session in Espacio Fundación. And if you don't know what we do, we work particularly in 3 areas in the foundation. We work to attempt to contribute to improving education and the broadness of mind of young people, and we also emphasize dissemination of knowledge and culture as much as possible. So in this context, we're delighted to be able to collaborate with the Society Organization of Spanish Scientists and the organization United States also. We also collaborate with them because we think that science certainly is knowledge. Science is also culture. And science is also one of the most important tools to improve society, to create wealth and jobs, and to be able to improve the working conditions and living conditions of everyone. So this is particularly important for us because we mix science and art, which are 2 areas which are very often not seen together. Here in Espacio, we do have a lot of experiences where we mix the 2, but we're particularly interested in doing this today. So without any more ado, I would welcome you here and thank you for and welcome the organization. Thank them for all the work they've done. And we're delighted to have America Valenzuela here as a journalist to do the presentation and the interviews. She's fantastic in dissemination in this area, and this is really admirable. So we're delighted to have her here today. So without any more ado, we'll leave you with Javier Ana Vilalta to talk about the project.
Bueno, primero de todo, muchas gracias por permitir.
Thank you very much for allowing us to present this initiative in Espacio Telefónica. It's a great place to be in, and we're delighted to be able to present this initiative. So I'd like to introduce a little bit what is this Society of Spanish Scientists in the UK. We are researchers who are based in the UK. We have no political affiliation of any type. We're independent, and we cover a number of different disciplines. So we've got lots of different functions there. Socially, the idea is to have a network of Spanish scientists across the UK, and as a mission to promote scientific communication through by organising seminars and different activities for disseminating knowledge. One of our objectives is to be scientific representatives, either both in British and Spanish institutions. We act as disseminators of science. So one of the objectives of which is disseminating science was what led to this opportunity. So we wanted to join 2 things, 2 disciplines that we thought that were very different to each other, because they also have a lot of similarities, and we'll see this over the session. So our idea was to set up a space for scientists and to be able to get together and to talk about science in a very reachable way and a very easy way to understand for the general public, because we think that society can advance, can move forward if it shares its knowledge, and very often science and society are very separated from each other. So this is one of the activities that we think could be very useful to be able to promote science. So this initiative started in January this year. We had we organised an event with artists and scientists together, and we put out lots of emails to artists. It was more difficult for us to get in touch with them because obviously for scientists we have all our Spanish scientists in the organisation. There are also other societies. So we did a networking event where we brought together the artists and the scientists, and they presented their work, and looking at these similarities, we matched them up in pairs. So this is how, so to create a work of art, this was the idea. They should work together on a project and present this project after a month. So these project ideas which we received, we selected 9, and at the end they were presented on the 17th of June. There were quite a lot of different proposals, and amongst these we had sculpture, painting, a short film, very varied. There was a closing ceremony with a talk presented by Arthur Miller talking about the third culture on RC, and also we organised an independent committee made up of 3 artists and 3 scientists who assessed the proposals and met in London and set the criteria to decide what would be the 3 winning couples that we'll see today, and we'll be talking to them. They'll be telling us about their projects and how the collaboration arose, etc. So this will be presented by America Valenzuela in a minute. So this is we'll be able to talk quite freely and widely about their projects with everyone. And if America would like to come up to the stage, thank you very much. Yeah, can you hear us okay? Good. You stay with the microphone because we want you to join us later on. Whenever you want, you could sort of break in and contribute, say something, whatever or get us back onto the subject if we stray. So please participate with us. Thank you very much for being here and for accompanying us in this fantastic setting in Telefónica on this cold evening in autumn. It was time that we had some coal. So science and art, when they come together, as an artist and a scientist come together and into contact, they can do fantastic projects, works of art. We saw some exceptional drawings on Tuesday with these neurons and brains, and Leonardo. We know about Leonardo da Vinci, who did some fantastic drawings of his inventions, also on anatomy, and also one of his works has become one of the most expensive paintings in the world ever, which has been auctioned for an incredible price, 380 million euros. So it's incredible. This is a fantastic work. There's no doubt about that. So the ideas, the dreamlike ideas of artists, their points of view and their original different points of view can awaken the minds of scientists, a sort of a eureka phenomenon in scientists. So de Coulet discovered the structure of the benzene molecule by dreaming about a circumference made up of snakes that were biting each other's tails. So in this way, something clicked in his brain, and he discovered the secret behind the structure of the benzene molecules. So this is fantastic. Anyway, this is an open space where you can use your mobile phones. They don't have to be off. You can share all this with your friends. Anything that you could use the hashtag Arte y Ciencia in Spanish, and you can share this with us. So these snakes could be easily have been a painting by Escher, which is pure mathematics. Perhaps any work of art can be looked at from a scientific point of view. You can look at a painting, thinking about this optical effect, optical illusion, the geometry, the chemical composition of paintings, which the materials that form a sculpture. How many artists are there today here in this room? apart from the evident ones, the ones that we know about. Yeah? And scientists, how many scientists have we got? Oh, more. Okay. And so who feels more of an artist than a scientist? Come on, a lot of people haven't put up their hands. And who feels more scientist than artist? Some people still haven't put up their hands. So perhaps there are people who've put up their hands in both cases, because I think there's no limits between, no barriers between art and science. It's a fuzzy sort of division, if you like. So I think the scientists, the émigrés, knew this very well. The Spanish scientists who've gone to the UK, they know this very well. So anyway, they organised these sort of blind dates, as it were, between scientists and artists. And here, really, the sparks flew, and there was a kind of a fire in a way. You'll see this through the people who are seeing this in streaming will know that those works of art are on the second floor here, and we have their authors, their painters, the artists. We have them here today. So these works of art would not have been possible without the help of the foundation. This romance that they have with art and science, and Telefónica loves this mix, art and technology particularly, and I think they're particularly sensitive to that. And I think over the course of the year you'll see an awful lot of initiatives and presentations on art, science, technology in this setting. So let's go on to our artists and scientists, these pairs that we have, these couples. So please come up to the stage. We're going to talk to you, and let's have a round of applause for them. So that we can get to know you all more. So come on, more applause, a bit stronger than that. This initiative is called Art and Science. So, in order, we've got lots of names here. Thomas Di Domenico, you're a computer scientist, you're an Argentinian. Marta Fuster, the artist, audiovisual artist in love with light. You won the first prize with your project Common Bio. The second one, Ana Lopez, scientist and neurobiologist. We have her here. And Jane Frost, artist, English artist who uses recycled materials. And so this is Regeneration Recycling, their project. So they will be telling us all about what this involves. Third prize, Juan Pedro González Varo, who's an ecologist who specialised in seed dispersal. And the other half of the couple is Ion Eras, is a graphic designer and also scientist. So we've got a bit of advantage there. So we're going to get to know you a bit better. So Thomas is a computer engineer. So nobody better than you can understand this massive amount of data that we have access to with the advance of technologies. So this is what you've done a little bit with this work of art with Common Bio. So perhaps you can tell us about this, because Marta is this artist in love with her dancing partner, as it were. So how have you worked together? Tell us a bit about your first meeting and how this all evolved, and how this contact between artists and scientists came about. Well, I had been looking for collaboration for about a year with scientists, so when I got an email from the organisation, I immediately signed up. I went from Glasgow to Cambridge. I think I was the only one who came from there, and I was very curious about this initiative and excited about what we could do through this collaboration through SRUK. So really, my partner was excited about this, about all the sort of things that we could do. Can you?
Tomás.
Sí. Perdón.
Yes, I'm a computer engineer. I analyze data with, and I was always curious about converting this data into something different. I was very interested in dissemination and spreading knowledge, and I try to share science as much as possible. So I was working with a program that had to do with this, which interprets DNA through electrical signals. And a colleague of mine had done this in Australia, and the experiment of converting this electric signal into sound sounded a bit strange, but that's what he was doing. So I thought of doing something rather similar to this. And when originally the idea was to see if perhaps I could work with a musician to set up something perhaps with a sort of alien type of sound or something, or something harmonious that we could. But when I met Marta, I suddenly thought about this project because she was translating solar panel signals into sound with light, and we immediately thought light and color. I thought this is tremendous, so perhaps this where we can get together and do this. So, and what is this? Common Bio? What is it about exactly? Well, what we have is. Have you gone to visit it? Yeah, have you seen it? It's just next door. Yeah. So, well, to just give you it's the projection of 3 panels, and each panel represents an organism. So what we are showing is colours and a design with basically what Marta proposed, which is the 3 panels of colour and a sound assigned to each panel, and these 3 organisms have different DNA sequences. So we convert this into color, and time passes. We compare the molecules. Each one takes on a different color, or is similar to the next one, depending on how far they're. So you can visualize this. You can imagine a gorilla and a human being, which are virtually the same. You have the human being or a worm. They have a lot of similarities in DNA and a lot of differences. So we play with this control panel to change the colors, etc., and sounds, to be able to try to visualize these differences and similarities. This is great. You have this on. You can see the works until the 19th, until the end of Science Week, and you can play around because this is with it, because it's interactive, and you can change the 3 animals that you visualize. So they're really lights, and you can try this out and see how similar, how different they are. So you've explained it very well. Marta, what was your role in all this, in the development of this work? Well, when we met, you showed me this MP3, etc., where you'd this project with your friend in Argentina, and so I took out a code out of this with the files that Thomas was sending me, the data files, and I made a code to be able to translate this information to colors and light and sound. And from there we presented it, and then I think you got very excited about it, didn't you? And we started to set up interaction, and I think America, you mentioned when Marta is a programmer. That's a big advantage there, that she's that really helps us in the whole project. So that really, I got really excited about it. Yeah. So that was great, and this was a really dynamic thing that happened between us. Okay, so let's get to know. I don't want to leave you out at the end. We'll jump from one pair to the other, and you can interrupt us whenever you like and add whatever you want to at any moment. So, Anna, it's your turn. What are you? So, Anna and Jane, how did you meet? How did you get together, and what happened exactly?
Acting session.
That's everyone.
Yeah, and we were sent the email, and I was invited, like Marta was, and I really wanted to work with somebody who had focus and a project, because artists often love to play with everything, and there are no limitations in the world. You can play with anything, any material, any substance. I focus on recycling, regeneration, reforming materials into other materials and shapes and sizes. And in conversation, that was what we discovered we had in common. Carry on.
Sí, so I'm going to talk in Spanish. I think it's going to be much easier for me.
Yeah.
Porque Ana, tú te dedicas.
I'm going to talk in Spanish because I think it's easier for me. So, so you work in recycling as well, yeah? So it's different, but they've got that similarity. Yeah, I've always worked in new generation models, but now more specifically, I work on cellular recycling, how this can modulate diseases. So through this recycling system, this is very often damaged our recycling system in Alzheimer and lots of other diseases. So in the first session when we met each other, which was a bit like the sort of speed dating idea, and she had said that she was very conscious of the importance of recycling, etc., of we have to recycle more, how can we do this, how can we reuse materials and just what we've got. And I said, okay, well the cells do this, and cells have been doing this for millions of years, so this is how the love relationship, as it were, happened. So so this has been really quite easy going, the whole thing. It was a fantastic attraction we felt for this idea of doing something together. So it's great to see how a scientific project can become quite complicated as we go along, and these systems are not simple things. Finding a solution, for example, for Alzheimer. So I think something as simple as a recycling program, something that could be expressed artistically, we thought was great. So you may not know what Anna's talking about, so we didn't know about this process in cells until last year. From Nori Osume had discovered this. Yes, have I got it written down? Is it right what I'm saying? He won the Nobel Prize for discovering how this mechanism of how these cells created a mechanism of recycling to clean out and leave the cell completely unpolluted and clean of all waste products, etc. So this is a system where both proteins that are damaged or not functional, or they're old proteins, or they simply are damaging, or organelles, for example, which are small cell compartments that have specific functions, can be included within the vesicle, within the cell, and in these vesicles where everything breaks down and all the materials, we've got the raw material and these structures that have formed originally, they can be reused to create new organelles or new proteins. So this is really interesting. Okay, so you've been working on have you always worked with recycled material, or through this love? Did this love appear at a specific moment of your career, this idea of working with recycling?
Sí, porque
in the textile industry, so producing a lot of rubbish. It's one of the dirtiest industries in the world, and in reaction, and partly because I was ill for a while, there was this reflection about the sickness of humanity, the sickness of the world. And I don't want to handle new materials. I want to adapt and produce something that expresses this problem.
Contadnos en qué consiste la obra.
Tell us what your work is all about. What the work of art. Tell us what it's all about.
Because Anna works with fish in her research, zebrafish, all of which are black and white, of course. Hence it. I went, and you put me right. She also uses the DNA of a fish that changes colour in UV light, or changes under UV light conditions. So I went round my studio with a ultraviolet torch one night to see what I could find in my studio that would express something of this. And the pieces that I've made are with combinations of black and white, but they change under the ultraviolet light. And there's one piece that I've made as well, which I discovered. Anna came and visited my studio, and I had these wire forms made out of recycled telephone wire, which they're sort of like plant forms, but Anna tells me they are
Autophanos. Clearly see there was these structures inside the cell that are able to I don't know whether I'm speaking English, but anyways, continue. So yes, they engulf these portions of cytoplasm and then for final degradation. So sí, las estructuras que al final pues engloban todo el material.
Yeah, these are the structures that have all the material. See, this is a process of autophagy, okay? So this is what I saw anyway. This is what I saw. So, making reference to the fluorescent proteins, this is a technique that's very much used in all laboratories. What we do is we put a mark down so we can identify the protein very easily. We have a fluorescent protein which we can see, and then I work with Persebes fish, which are very basic, very old. It's a human. It's a very ancient fish and the transparency that you see in this fish is fantastic to be able to see that fluorescent protein. So this helps me to see the breakdown in the protein and the rates of breakdown. And I saw the importance of this tool because it's a very much used tool in any laboratory. So we try to use the same tool, and with a UV lantern or torch, as it were. So this was the idea. So let's see. Let's get to know our other group, John Eras and Juan Pedro. So I think you've done a photo of reality more than a concept, an abstract artistic concept. Can you tell us exactly what this was all about? Oncologist and a graphic designer with a scientific background. Tell us about this work. Okay, well, this work of art is landscape, because I work with seeds. These are plants that produce carnivorous seeds, these fleshy seeds, as it were. So, like peach or an olive, these are all domesticated fruits, as it were. But in wildflowers, we also have an awful lot of examples of this fleshy fruit, and they're eaten by the animals. So this helps the process of seed dispersal. So there's a kind of symbiotic relationship where animals and plants help each other, because the plant doesn't have movement and the animal moves. So this type of service provided by animals to plants is very interesting from the point of view of the loss of habitat. Half the land service has animals have lost their original habitat, and we have habitats created by man. We have fields, cultivated fields. So for plants that live in what's left of their habitat, it's very important to be able to disperse their seeds very successfully to animals. So the investigation is all about this, focusing on using DNA, basically. So what we do is, in fragmented landscapes where we have a bit of forest left and there's a anthropic landscape, we take the seeds that have been dispersed by animals, and then we ask the seed through DNA to which type of habitat is expressed, because as the seed has been in the stomach, has remains of the DNA of the animal. We ask where does this come from. Part of the seed has tissue which is exactly identical to the trees, to the plant that created that seed. So if you take a lot of leaves from the landscape, you take the genetic profile of the seeds and those trees, you are able to work out pairs of seeds and see how different species of birds or different species of animals disperse the seeds across the landscape. So this is what it's all about. This is the part which is research. Okay, so this involves a lot of landscape, a lot of countryside. I asked about seed. What's this? How do you do this? Well, we have to take up the excrement of animals. We have to collect it. Yes, we have to and look at the seeds. So it's a tough job working on site in the countryside. This is what you have to get your boots dirty, go out and collect those seeds wherever they are. So yeah, so this is fantastic how you've interpreted this in the photograph. I imagine John has put this all together, all this data, in a kind of photograph with linear paths. You've sort of traced out the path of those birds. Yeah, tell us about it. You tell us about it.
I like to respect the data and show it how it is, to visualize it. Unfortunately, I think Telefonica wouldn't charter a plane to take the photo, and I couldn't find a photo of that landscape, so we've recreated it from satellite data. So we've got satellite imagery, we've got height data, and so we made the landscape, we repopulated it with 3D trees. And yes, we tracked, so Wampe showed me these graphs and data, which were a little dry, and we wanted to visualize that, make it look exciting, because why can't science be sexy too? So we took these pairs of points, the sources, the fruits, and the deposition events where he gets his hands dirty, and we joined them up and we showed paths between them to try and see how these birds are sort of integrating with the landscape, how they behave there. To try and make it more visual and communicate the science.
La verdad que visualmente es muy atractiva.
So visually, it's really very, very attractive. If you haven't seen it, you have to go along and see it. You haven't told us about how you met. What was the magic moment, as it were? Well, it was the reception. It was the networking event when we met together, because we were the only two people that couldn't go. So what happened was, we were very sorry, so we contacted Anna. We said we were very interested in participating, but unfortunately we're not been able to go. Okay, Anna, you tell this story. Yeah, well, they couldn't come along to the event, so what we did was we did a kind of blind date, as it were. And looking at their profiles, from John's profile and also Wampe, we saw that they could very well be a great match. So we put them in contact with each other to see if the spark would happen, and there was. So okay, tell us about it then. So what did you expect? What were you hoping to get out of this meeting? Because I imagine that you were very busy with your own work, but how do you feel about doing something else which might complicate your lives a bit, or your timetables, or your general life pattern? Did you feel what motivated you there? Well, I think it was just an accident away, really, because when Anna told me about the event of Art and Science, with the kind of research I was doing, it was very difficult for me to imagine a work that wouldn't be actually visual, and how we could bring in on this spatial component, because I work in fragmented landscape. There's movement, there's different types of birds, taking the seeds to different parts of the landscape. So at the end of the day, the spatial component was very important. So I imagined that working with an artist, there'd have to be a graphic component. So anyway, it turned out that the artist who couldn't go to this meeting was a graphic designer. So that was fantastic. So we had this blind date, as it were. Okay, so what we could do now is perhaps ask questions from your questions from the audience, and I'll be asking some questions as well. Have we got a roving mic around there? Do you have any questions out there? Please use the microphone so that we can translate.
Ahí tenemos.
Hola.
Hi. I was curious about this program that you did to transfer this data into sound. What language did you use for programming? Python. First, it was the prototype. We had the prototype that Marta did was in processing, which is a language which is the audiovisual. But when I got excited about this, we designed an interactive controller, and processing wasn't suitable, so we went on to Python. So, do you have? Can we look at this? It's not that the hardware design isn't there, but you can. This is. I simply have to apply myself, because it's an electronic concept. I haven't really got an idea about how to design the hardware. So we have an incredible level in the public, very, very specialized. I wanted to ask you all, anybody can answer? Not just how did you get on with each other, the relationship between an artist and a scientist, but what did each one of you contribute? At the end of the day, you have very different profiles, and each one of you have a very different point of view. So how did you come to an agreement on how to do the work of art? Anybody want to say anything? Okay, I'll speak then. I'll start. Well, really, the two of us, I think, have had a great relationship right from the start, right from the moment we met each other. She has come to my laboratory several times, fascinated with everything, taking photographs, opening drawers to see what was in there, and looking at our containers for recycling, etc., which you have to treat very carefully, of course. And she was also, I've been to her studio. So we talked about the scientific project on many occasions, and I was delighted to go to her house and see what she does. And we argued and discussed things through email, etc. But I never saw the work of art exactly, and I didn't know what she was going to do. So the day I saw it in this session in London, she sent me a few little photos, and I saw it was like spoilers, as it were, of what the work was going to be at the end of the day. But I saw it and I thought, wow. I was in shock, as it were. I was delighted. I have my scientific mind, of course, and I didn't know what to expect, really. But the model, the exhibition, the care that she put into the work, her interpretation. So it's like my model is a fish until we worked with a zebra fish. So it's really, you have to go and see it. The materials she used, it's so Jane. I loved it. So did you all do it in this way? That you didn't see the work until it was completed? The scientists, I mean? You didn't see the work until it was completed? No, we shared some images on email, yeah. To see how things were going well, questions, what do you think, how do you like it, etc. Yeah. Thomas was in Cambridge, I was in Glasgow, so it was pretty difficult to meet up and see our workplaces, so we worked a lot on email, sending sketches, etc. And through, it was more of a academic approach. Okay, and has this enriched you, this experience working with a scientist, working with an artist? Have you taken on points of view that you didn't have before, or really is it that science and art, there's no wall between the two, and or you felt that you didn't learn anything new there? In my case, my personal case, I think it's a bit like what I said at the beginning. I had a slight little idea of what this could be, but then Marta took it to a much higher level, as it were, with sound and with the concept of colours. So this was something very organic, which expanded all the laws that I believed in, and I think showed me things that I would never have thought of. Yeah, I was Thomas was working on how to measure a molecule, not by observing it, but by the manipulation around it. So I think it's a fascinating concept. So I started to use it in my own work. So this is okay. So amongst the we have a scientist who is an artist amongst the audience. Do you want to comment on your experience as a combination of the two? You don't need any couple there, do you? Because you have both. So what do you think? Yeah, in my case, I'm a molecular biologist, and it's true that at least I experienced this right from my childhood. I always had one part that was I was very interested in art and being creative, and also very interested in the science side. But it's true that I think the educational systems mean that you have to grow up very quickly, and you combine letters and science. And I did choose science. I had to choose between arts and science, but I was always doing artistic things, even though I was in science. So the project that I presented deals with my own experience as a scientist, and as a woman, I think also, because in my opinion, you can never separate your own identity, your own reality from what you produce. So as a molecular biologist, I did a lot of in vitro work, and then when I started to work in clinical research, I had access to a lot of results of work that had been done in vitro, and I was very interested in talking and transmitting a little bit about a particular cellular type that any molecular biologist would work with, the famous particular HeLa cell. I wanted to put all the beauty that I'd seen through a microscope, and all this marking, antibodies and fluorophores, etc., that we talked about, and create it more, something more visual, something more artistic. So it's true that as a scientist, it's difficult to get into artistic circles. You think that you are nothing there. And this is how I saw this. And I felt I was very much outside, and I was very admiring of all this. Diana has her gallery, and she supported me tremendously and said she was very interested in what I do. So as I said before, the two things go together. There's no art without science, there's no science without art. So she supported me a lot on this, and so it's true what Christina has said. Thank you very much. That I think we have to choose very early between arts and science. Yeah, it's true. Did you always want to be artists and always want to be scientists, Jane?
To some extent, I had no choice. I can remember wanting to be an artist when I was 3. I actually have that memory. Yeah. That didn't exclude experiments and recording information and wanting to know facts. It's not two different worlds. Scientists are experimenters as much as artists are. And it's just a different direction to me.
I agree.
Yeah. And because it's gone off. Because I was part of the textile industry, there's a lot of science in that, in how to produce fibres from oil. There's a lot of those, and how to produce dyes and combine different things at different temperatures.
O sea que al final, claro, en realidad estabas en...
So you were in both fields really simultaneously, working in the textile industry. What about Thomas? In my case, I worked as a consultant, computer in consultant. The other aspect I came in a lot later. So I didn't really have much motivation for a long time with data, so I needed to specialize in something different. And so then I was contracted by bank people, and I wasn't really interested in that. So I began to look for an alternative, and I became a volunteer in a lab, and I got to know really gained a lot of knowledge there. And many years later, I started to work. I decided to change my focus and mix science. So you had a more technical profile, yeah? Marta and John, in my case, when I finished schools, I went to environmental science, and it was my father who encouraged me to move into art, and that's how it happened. And so artistic science, and I'd always been interested in perhaps mixing the two. So you have a lot of you have this duality. What about John?
Yeah,
Sí, yo siempre.
Scientist, and by the time I was doing a PhD, I realised that I'd lost my enthusiasm and maybe wasn't very good at it. So this was a bit of a hobby, and I could see the value in being able to communicate science work in a visual way. So from a very practical point of view. And I wouldn't say I was particularly special at drawing or painting or traditional art forms, but by doing work through the computer, it enabled me to create things, to be much more creative and visual. So I would use it when I was giving talks to my peers, to groups, explain my work, and I found that really useful. So then when I finished my PhD, I thought, well, this is maybe this could be a job as well as a hobby. So here I am. This is kind of what I do now. So yeah, it's good.
Juanpe? Well, I was absolutely convinced that I wanted to be a scientist right from the start. I wanted to be a biologist, and when I didn't think biologist was a scientist, I just loved documentaries, the Félix Rodríguez de la Fuente and all these famous people. I loved the natural history and the stories that I saw in documentaries. And then I found that to tell a story like this on documentary through the BBC or whatever, the way Rodríguez de la Fuente did it, there's a whole scientific job behind this. These stories are told about how nature functions and how this is discovered through science, through scientific method with a lot of observation, a lot of experiments. So then I discovered over time that I did want to be a scientist. I became clear about that. Anna? Well, a bit like Juanpe, I'm a biologist too, and I really wanted to be a biologist right from the start, but then during my degree I started working in a lab, and then I never came out, really. So I love art, I love painting, I've got my acrylic paints at home, and I share Jane's idea. I think art is also experimental. It's not just, you can't separate art from science. I think they go together. There are no real barriers, I don't think. Not such rigid barriers, anyway. Okay, so I would conclude that you all wanted to go to that meeting because each one of you had this curiosity, either through art or through science. So the opposite side of what you were doing yourself. So this is perhaps the key to the success of this whole thing. Okay, so let's open this up to the public. Anybody want to ask a question in Spanish or in English? Let's make the most of the fact that we have these people here today, and they're going to be going off very soon. So please ask a question if you want. So are you sharing it with the hashtag? Oh, I have the impression that in all these cases, I don't know if I've understood it correctly, this was more or less your first experience of participating in a project with a scientist or with an artist. So was this more or less the first time in any case, I'm curious to know if after this experience which seems satisfactory in all cases, have you thought about continuing along these lines and doing more collaboration of this type and going further into this whole thing, deeper into it? This type of collaboration with another discipline. And if this is the case, what paths do you think you are planning to go along? If this is a question for anybody, or all of you. Yeah, I think it's very interesting. helps you to go beyond, to go further in science and for the world, for society. So it has a tremendous capacity for dissemination, much more than art. So I think when I look at the graphic part of my work, people think that I'm crazy, but I think this image that John's done is incredible. What he's achieved. He achieved in something that I could never achieved in a million years. So I think this is important that we work together, and it's worth it to make this effort. But also, I think scientists. Perhaps it's very difficult for scientists to find time to work with us. I think this effort outside their own field, the mainstream of science, is perhaps not appreciated in many areas. So there are 3 or 4 things that perhaps people become famous for. See, it's difficult to find that time to be able to participate in this type of initiative. So it's not easy, no. Yeah, following the comment of Juanpe, we were talking about this actually at lunchtime today. I certainly would be a volunteer for the next event, yes. We said that if you want to put this into your CV, it would have perhaps a lot more impact for an artist in their CV that you've worked with a scientist, you've created a work of art, etc., by working alongside with the scientist. Then for scientists, if we put this into a CV, it wouldn't add much, unfortunately. We're obviously not doing this to create more CVs. So I think it's necessary for dissemination, to teach science, because really we are in a period of a lack of good science and good advertising of science. So I think that this is one of the best ways, best shop windows, as it were, to advertise science at all levels. So if people, do they understand what certain if they understand what certain type of research is for, do you think there would be more money for research? Yes, I think it's important for the development of all countries as investment. I think this is vital, that a lot of investment should go into science, because at the end of the day, this is what has to do with the economic development of a country. So yes, otherwise dissemination, the public have to understand what scientific research is for. It's really, initially they may think it's all very complex, nobody explains anything to them simply, and then they can if they understand this is a push forward for society so that they invest, so that more money is invested in science. I think it's vital to have this type of project to be able to express very clearly what's happening, and I think they can touch society's heart, as it were, and they can feel identified with it, and so this is, I think, very positive, and will lead to more investment, so that these research projects can be taken to its logical conclusion. Anything else? Anybody else want to say something? Are you waiting on Pablo's question? No.
Because I think it's also a good way to demonstrate for the education system at a younger age not to specialise too young, to broaden the education so that you can connect the art and the science and the different skills and the different thinking. And I don't know many countries that do that, but if you see children exploring nature, they're not just exploring science, they're exploring art, they're exploring mud, they're exploring everything, and to do that in all topics.
De hecho, hoy en día hay mucho.
Yes, nowadays there are a lot of research teams which are multidisciplinary precisely for that reason. They've got an artist in their team to be able to give them different points of view, to awaken perhaps creativity or a particular scientist who will see things that they hadn't seen right up to that moment. So through their knowledge they can interpret specific elements or discover perhaps a new scientific discovery. Yeah, following on from what Jane said, with Marta we were thinking a little bit about how to look at this work, and I think that what she proposed was, she proposed us to take this to the Science Museum, that we should go there, and we should, because as Jane says, the world, we have to see things from a didactic point of view. When I started to see this, I automatically saw myself playing with lots of things in the Science Museum, but in a very didactic, very educational way. And it's an artistic work. So there's a graphic that you talked about also. Perhaps this graphic work is very often not very appreciated very much. So I felt very motivated by the fact that this should be educational, and that people could learn from what we were doing, and there would be a dissemination of ideas and knowledge. Yes, I think Thomas was great there, because I was working on something very abstract, and I was trying to think of what DNA, lost time, what's all this about, what can I do, and I think he sorted me out there and made me clear about what I wanted to do. So the collaboration was very good, I must say. Questions from the audience? Any questions from the audience? Nobody want to ask anything? Yeah, there's a hand there. Hi, I would like to know something. What particular thing have you learned from the other person, from your partner in this project? Any specific thing that you've learned from your partner? Wampe? This is like couples, when they're in love, they go silent, they've got nothing to say, they're dumbstruck. This can also break partners. What have I learned? Well, I think that John is a digital artist, so before we started the collaboration, he showed me what he did, and I don't know about the techniques that are used for this digital work. So this showed me the digital illustrations and everything, and what I had no idea about was how he was going to come close to my data, to my science, etc. And I was very surprised how quickly he saw how to connect the dispersal of the seeds, etc., and link it up with the tree that produced the seed, and the movement of the seed. He gave it three-dimensionality. The birds flying over the trees, etc. So it gave it an artistic component, which was, I was fascinated. It really surprised me and taught me a lot about, it taught me to see my data in a different way, I think. And I realised that it would have a much greater impact educationally.
The idea that people went into this much detail about bird poo and were so passionate about it, and it's it's so specialised, and for me that was one of the issues I had with being a scientist, was that you get very narrow and you really have to specialise to go forward. And for me, all of science is interesting, and I love learning about new things and jumping around and the variety. So yes, thank you for adding to the variety.
Con caca de pájaro.
For me, working with Thomas, I think I've learned a lot about something, a problem I have in my own work. Up to what point, how much information can we give to the viewer to be able to understand the work, and what public are we looking for? What will the viewer actually see in our work? Yeah, I think, I don't want to repeat, but yes, I think the same thing. When you talked about attraction and minimalism in works, I wanted to aggregate and make something bigger. So I learnt what this minimum was that can be used to transmit an idea. How can you transmit something that would be interesting, but also without the main idea being lost? And that connects up with the question that you asked about how to continue with this. Well, I think we think of so many things that we could change the work, perhaps modify it, create another one from there. Now that we have this interaction, without having any limitations of just saying we're going to do something specific. We'll see what happens.
What have I learned from? I think Anna, in a different way to the way I work, she loves lots of different things and is attracted to work with a lot of different things, but the rigorous research was a model that I really liked and thought that's really useful as an artist, because I'm a bit of a magpie, you know, picking the birds that pick everything up and play with it and rearrange it, and that's exactly what I do. But this has made me present an idea and leave it, and that's how that will stay. But there'll be more ideas and more materials, but the presentation and the result is different from how I've worked before.
Yeah, I said this to Jane before. I had the presentiment that I've learnt a lot more from you than you have learnt from me, I think. I worry about that. So I'm talking about personally, because I look at her work and it's just fantastic. She very conscious on and has is very dedicated to the idea of reuse and recycling, and it's simple, and she's very she's persevering and tenacious, and I look at her work and I see her in her work. Yeah, it's clear that you're going to want to repeat experiences, and there'll be more editions of this. Oh, we lost the microphone. Yeah, we're going to have a similar addition to this to Art and Science. It would be a second edition organised in Scotland, and it would be a little bit different. It will include the public. We're going to form we have an artist and a scientist and a young audience, and Marta Fuster will be recruiting the artists. We'll see, she can talk more about this initiative, but she's going to be dealing with the artistic aspect. Yeah, it's an organisation in Scotland, and we've been looking for artists, and the idea up to now it will be with a scientist, with his work, his or her work, collaborating with an artist, doing a workshop, training activity with children, presenting events presented at different trade fairs, science fairs in Edinburgh and Glasgow, and this would be creating the work there at the, when you actually during the presentation. Yes, creating a work of art with the children. Yeah. And we might also repeat this same initiative, exactly the same. So, but we'll see about that. So, and what about the exhibition? Or where's the next place we'll be able to see it? Well, we're not sure. We're at a very initial phase, but I think the idea is to put it on in Edinburgh and Glasgow. Would be two places where we would put the works on show. We would exhibit the works. So, yeah, we've got them here till the 19th, yeah, and then after this there'll be one in Cambridge with the 3 winning works, and but also we'll see works from the other partners that were involved in London at the closing event. This will be similar. Similar event to the one in London, where what we do up north. So with the working group we had in Cambridge, and there will also be a talk which will have to be confirmed on Chernobyl, with a photo that I saw in an exhibition in Manchester. And so why you're not stopping? It looks as if you're going to be very busy. Yeah, I think we'll continue in that direction. Yeah, that's great. So nothing bad can come out of this. I think we'll conclude there. Thank you very much indeed to all of you who've come along to spend the evening and listen to these very interesting ideas through our scientists and artists. So a big round of applause for everyone. And a round of applause for Telefónica for their help, for enabling us to have this event here, and allowing us to put exhibit the works. It would have been impossible to do this without their help. So thank you to everyone also who've been listening to us on streaming, and time to have a rest, and don't forget to come and visit the work, the exhibition. So those of you who are, so please bring people along. I think these, you've got Norman Foster also, and Life on Mars, so there are lots of other exhibitions to see. Thank you very much. Thank you.